Good morning, everyone. So good to see so many of you this morning. That's really, really promising for a new year. Um, in this Western culture, we call this the beginning of the year. Other cultures, it's some other date. So it's arbitrary, but it really doesn't matter. It's a state of mind more than anything else. I want to start this morning by we're going to end, of course, with a prayer, which we call the prayer for protection, the one that's on the moon right now. But before we do that, I think it would behoove all of us to put a different prayer at the beginning. I'm going to change this prayer just slightly to sort of unitize it because originally it is a beseeching prayer, and as you know, in unity we don't beg or plead for anything. We affirm it. So I'm going to change this into an affirmative statement. Usually it says, God, grant me the ability. This is a serenity prayer. God, grant me the ability. Like, oh, I need it. It's outside of myself. No, it's in me. It's in me and it's in each and one of us. So I'm going to say, God grants me, grants, Grants. God grants me the ability, or God grants us the ability. God grants us the ability to accept the things we cannot change. God grants me the ability to accept the things we cannot change. The courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That prayer goes on from there, but that's enough of it right now for each and every one of us. God grants us the ability within ourselves to create a happy new year, a happy new you, a happy new us, a happy new everything. This year, I seek to have a happier new year, a happier new you, me, all of us. When we say that, though, every year we say Happy New Year as though it's going to be something that happens to us as opposed to something that happens through us. And that's where we make our greatest error in consciousness, assuming that something in the outer will change in such a way that it falls into agreement with the way we view happiness. And that's not it at all. I've come to the wisdom or the understanding within myself that the only thing that I can change or that needs to change for happiness to appear in my life is me. If I change something inside myself, give it a different viewpoint, carry it in a different direction, I am able to create a happier new year, a happier new you. Each of us have that ability. Whether we use it or not is a different story. Now, carrying on with that, let's look in the past for just a moment and go through a certain portal. You remember, it seems like yesterday, but it was last year, or at the beginning of the year anyway, where I described Janus, or it should be Janus, the way the Romans would have said it in Latin, because they didn't have a j sound in their language. They used a y sound. Janus. Janus was the gatekeeper for the past and the present, the doorkeeper. As a matter of fact, he was called Janitor for this doors. A janitor he was, we would say. Strange, isn't it? The janitor at the school. That's who Janus is. I want to go back and review exactly what the temple of Janus looked like, because it was different than other temples, if you recall, the way I mentioned it before. It was a big round or oval circular area. I should do it like this: an oval circular area, and there was a gate at one end and a gate at the other end. One of these gates had a little turn into it that you went through so that if you were to look back, you couldn't see the outer any longer. The other one was just wide open at the other end. It was wide open at most times. The reason I say that is because the Romans had this tradition that they held to, that the temple or the stone walls that created this oval with a gate at one end and a gate at the other, and then a grassy area on the inside or a gravelly area, it really didn't matter. To them, the way that they viewed this was it's the same way that we view a labyrinth now. As you walk the labyrinth, you suddenly realize your mind is starting to open. You're thinking thoughts that you normally wouldn't think while you're walking here. Well, they did the same thing in this so-called temple. They walked through it, and as they walked through it, they thought. They thought about the past, they thought about the present, they thought about the future. The door on the other end, the door to the future, was only open. It was locked. It was only open during times of war. Strange, isn't it? During times of peace in Rome, it was locked. Well, needless to say, it wasn't locked very often. It stayed open most of the time because most of the time there was a war, rumor of war. We're getting biblical here. There was war going on most of the time. So they just thought, well, if we want to make this available, let's just lock it during peaceful times. When we don't really need it, things are going well. Or let's keep it open during times of war, when people will need it and they'll want to go in. Here's what they did while they were in there, in this temple of Janus. They wandered around. They checked out all the limitations of the walls on both sides. They just kind of browsed around in there, thought about things, mulled things over, got in touch with who they were in the present. And when they felt finished and they felt content once again, they walked out. They walked out the other one. One of the rules, this is the most important rule, is once you have gone into this temple area, you cannot and must not look back. Why? Because that part's done. It's over with. We like to say in society in these days, it is what it is. It was what it was. That's all the vision that they had in it. That was all the wisdom that it held for them. That's the past. Can't change the past. Can't do much with it. Let's be here in the present and head toward the future. Decide in this present moment how we're going to live our lives. How we can create a happier new you so that you and I and everyone else on this planet can create a happier new year and years to come. Now, I really, really seriously doubt there isn't a one of you right now listening to this or viewing this that hasn't had this trickling little thought going inside that says, yeah, but what about? And it sort of takes us off in a little bit different direction. The happier new year, 2024. The media has already set us up for the sound of the numbers 2024. It set us up for tension, stress, fear, concern inside ourselves as to what may or may not happen. But as you know, we have behind us already other years. Somehow, some way, we survived them. We grew from them. We changed who we were beforehand into who we are now. We wandered around and leaned up against the walls and said, is this the limitation? You know, I mentioned this before, and I think it's very important to know. The great composer Stravinsky said this, and you heard me say it before. I want to stress it so that you understand this very clearly, because it happens in all of our lives. He was asked, what is it that helps you create the genius you create? He thought for just a moment and said, I have learned the limitations. I have learned my own limitations. And because of learning my own limitations, I am free. So that's what he said. I have learned the freedom of my limitations. That to me is very, very, very profound. I've thought about it a lot. I've carried it with me. Whenever I come up against a wall, I know that's just the limitation that I have only to explore backwards and forwards, and I will find the freedom within that limitation. And I can move on. I don't fall into this old thing of, oh, I can't do that. I guess I better just practice and practice and practice till I can do that. Nope, not necessary. Walk along the wall, walk along the limitation. It carries you toward the future. Go to the other side. Walk, walk, walk across the grassy or pebbly area. Walk, walk, walk. You get to the other side, up, wall. Limitation. But it's not necessary to grieve or to be stressed out over that limitation whatsoever. It's all leading toward the future. All of it is. Remember, one of the rules is don't look back. Don't turn and look back. You know, the Bible teaches us a story about Lot and his wife. What did she do when she was warned not to look back? She did it anyway. She looked back and was turned to a pillar of salt. Well, that's all just something that's made up for a reason. We're not supposed to take it literally. We're supposed to look at that and see what that might mean in consciousness for our own lives. It means the same thing. Your limitations will lock you up if you allow them to only look back. Looking forward, that's where our happiness, a happier new you and a new year lies. Now, we're going to go through some changes this year. We're going to go through some serious points in this year coming. All of us have a viewpoint, and every one of these viewpoints is valid. Valid because it's carrying us toward a grander self. Remember back to that prayer. God is granting us the ability to accept the things we cannot change. That's the freedom of limitation. The courage to change the things we can. That is, we look at these things and we say, I can change that. And most of us, if you're anything like me, and I think you probably are to some degree, we just say, I could change that, but it's too much trouble. I think I'll just ignore it. No, face it. Face whatever it is. Look into the future. Not back, but into the future. Carry yourself into the future by using the ability that you are given, the courage to use that ability to change the things you can. And finally, the wisdom to be able to discern and get an idea of what the difference is. You know, sometimes we get stuck in believing that some things, if other people would just change the way they are, I'd be happy. That seems to be the way we are viewing things when we are stuck in this idea or system of of things that we cannot change. We still think that we can, or that they should be changed. Just accept some things the way they are and say, I can't change that, but I can live with it. I can move on. I'll focus my attention and my courage on the things I can change. Now, does that mean we look in the outer when we do that? Not very much. The courage to change the things you can is to do some self observance with inside and find out what inside yourself you can change. What viewpoint do you have? What negativity do you have that you can cast aside? What fear do you have inside that you can cast aside? What stress is within you that is just of your own making, and cast that aside? Focusing towards the future, walking out during this time of war, knowing the door is open. It is open and waiting for us to walk through it. Now, stay in the courtyard as long as you please to work these things out and decide which are the things you cannot change, and to gain the courage to change the things you can, change things within the inner of yourself. Then move on, move, act, just as the fifth idea of unity tells us. Knowing these things means nothing. We must be able to act on them. Act on it and walk out. Walk out into the new year. Walk out into a new light. Walk out into a new you without any sort of fear of your limitation, and simply know that there's freedom within it. I think if we are able to carry ourselves into this new time of the planet orbiting around the sun, we will be able to gain a greater knowledge of who we are, and more happiness will be ours for the very act that we tried to change who we are and the viewpoint that we carry in life. That's something that I want for each one of you and for myself. And for all those that I love and know and touch in some form every day, I want to see a happier, newer you. Happier New Year, everyone. God bless. Thank you. Unmute, let's talk.